Okay, I wanted to make this video about context and maybe miscommunication. I tried to make it before, and I'm very long-winded, and I'm trying to make this short, which is a failing proposition. But I practice Wu style Taijiquan, and I learned it many years ago from my teacher. I went to his. This is a story from my first day of class ever. The first class I ever went to. It was an introductory class. He was just kind of showing little tricks with Tai Chi and just kind of getting people interested in it. And one of the things he did was he wanted to show that the form within Tai Chi for applying force was the way that people would instinctually put their body if they wanted to apply the maximum amount of force. And with Wu style, the basic way of applying force forward is this archer stance, and it's a leaned forward posture, and this allows you to push with your back leg and apply force out the front. And so he told the class he didn't show us this, he told us, imagine there's a large piece of furniture, a large dresser or wardrobe or something like this. And it's too heavy to pick up and you need to slide it across the floor. You need to push it across the floor. He just said, everyone imagine this and line up your body the way you would line up. Imagine the wardrobe is right here. Show me what you would do. And what he was expecting was people to stand like this. And the vast majority of people did something like that. Maybe their foot posture, they weren't following the perfect Wu style structure or whatever, but their basic frame was 1 foot back, 1 foot forward, leaned forward into the front so you can use power from the back leg and push out the front. And this was what pretty much everyone in the class did, except for me. And I didn't do that. What I did was, in my head, if something is very heavy, I would want to use my shoulder. So I lined up kind of like this, right? With my shoulder, and I'm sitting here like this, and there's all these people in the class like this, and he comes by me and he's like, what are you doing? This isn't how you would push something. And I immediately kind of took offense because I was like, no, at the time I worked as a mover, right? I did this professionally. And if I wanted to move a big object, that's how I would move the big object. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, your way is wrong. That's a way to move a heavy thing. But if it's too heavy for your arms to put power into it, right? If you aren't strong enough with your arms to put that force in, you're going to get your shoulder into it to eliminate your arms. And you're going to push into it like this. And so there was this disconnect where I was thinking the way I naturally push is I get sideways to something and put my shoulder into it. And he was thinking the way people naturally push is you face the object and lean into it and push. And at the time, because of the other things I saw, and I was still interested in the Tai Chi, I continued on and I ended up learning this system from him for over 10 years now. But for the first several years, for a long time after this, I had a sort of questioning in the back of my head where I said, well, is this system correct about force? Because he told me that the way you instinctively would apply force was using this system. The system followed the instinctive way. They were together, and it was this leaning posture. And that wasn't the way I would instinctively think to push something. And over time, I came to understand the benefits of that triangle posture, but I would still, even to this day, if I wanted to push something, I wouldn't try to push it like that. I would put my shoulder into it. And for a long time, I had this disconnect where I thought, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me that my instinct doesn't match this system? Is this system right? The system isn't the same as my instinct. But my teacher said that the system followed instinctive, basic ways of doing something. And much later, after I had learned the forms and lots of different movements and things, I came to realize that I had a sort of snap understanding that my instinctive way of doing this was also in the form. It was also in the system. It just wasn't the movement from the system that my teacher happened to be trying to teach that day. So in his head, he had a set path of like, we're learning this movement, so I'm going to try to teach them a way for them to think of this movement, and then we'll move on and learn this movement. So there was no room in his head for someone that didn't use this movement for this situation. And in my head, I was thinking, in this situation, I would naturally do this, and it doesn't match up with what he's saying. And I went on and said, okay, well, I'll just learn his way of doing it. But there's something wrong here. And I could never figure it out for a long time until I realized that my motion was a movement from the Wu style form. It's also in the form called diagonal flying or slanted flying in English. That's the usual term for it. I've heard a couple other ones, but the one we most often say is diagonal flying. And in this stance, you line up sideways to something, and you push the stance in the form has your arm going into it. But if you remove this arm, or put it right here, then it is, and put this on, right? If you ignore the hand motions from the form, and put the hands right here, it's this. It's exactly the motion that I was thinking of. How should I push something? I put my shoulder into it and I push. And that's in the form. And because of this disconnect of the two different contexts of neither of us was wrong. But because we both had in our head that our way was the right way, we couldn't see that the other person was also right. And this is something that I see a lot in martial arts. For us, he was my teacher, so I just gave in to him, right? I gave in and said, okay, well, seeing other things from you, I believe that you are right about this. So in my head, I said, okay, I'll put my own way aside and I'll learn your way. And I learned it, and I realized, okay, his way of doing this is very good. And it wasn't till later I learned his way was right, but my way, I went over back to my way and said, oh, my way was also right. There wasn't anything wrong with this. It just wasn't what he was teaching right then. And when it's a teacher-student relationship like that, it's not a big issue. But I see this happen often in the martial arts community online, where two people will have stuck in their head so hard that their way is the right way to approach a situation, that they can't see that pretty much every situation has multiple correct ways to approach it, right? There are very, very few situations in the world where there is one correct response. In almost any situation, there are multiple things you can do that are correct and will solve the situation in an acceptable fashion. For instance, pushing this box, right? If I want to line up like this and push it, that works. If I want to line up like this and push it with my shoulder, that works. If I want to line up with my butt and push my butt into it, that also works, right? If I lean against it with my back and push with my feet, push against the ground, that'll also move the box, right? There are multiple ways of doing that. And every situation has multiple ways of doing something that are all correct. But because a lot of people have trouble kind of seeing this, and they get focused in on, well, I'm trying to show you how my way is correct. And the other person is saying, well, I'm trying to show you how my way is correct. And they don't see that both of their ways will do the same thing. They just can only think, well, your way isn't my way, so it must not be correct. And I just see this a lot in the martial arts community, and it kind of frustrates me. And that's kind of why I made this video. Also, because I was reminiscing about that misunderstanding with my teacher. I always thought that was kind of funny. Sorry if I've been kind of rambly, but the main point of this is just try to open up your mind to other possibilities, right? Just because you're right, don't take someone else saying they have a right way to mean you're wrong. This isn't always true. Yes, there are wrong ways, right? If I line up to push this, and I line up to push this box like this is wrong. There's no way in which this is a correct way to push the box. If I line up all falling over backwards and try to push the thing. Or if I line up and the box is right here and I just line up and try to bench press it, right? Or push up it, like that. That is not a correct way to try to move a heavy object that's much bigger than you. So there are wrong ways. But just because there are wrong ways doesn't mean that every way besides your way is wrong. There are multiple right ways for everything.